Sound, near Vancouver, near Seattle. And I loved the movie. I loved the openness and the natural, the bay and the whole environment. And almost simultaneous with that, my grandfather passed away and left me a small sum of money. And I don't remember how I found out about a 6-acre site out on Point Dume. And took that money and bought that site. And with the intention of not only building a family home, but building a small compound off of a cul-de-sac.
And those 6 acres, those are 6 homes on Sea
Ranch Way.
Sea Ranch Way in Point Dume, which has a gate.
Yes.
One of the only gated gates besides the Heather Cliff.
I didn't add the gate. The gate was added later.
Okay, just I know we can.
Yeah.
But tell us, so there were one of those homes was yours that
Yes.
you designed and lived in, and that's a beautiful neighborhood. When did you go from those 6 acres and living on that one to the beach? What, like, you started at Point Dume, and then when did you decide to go to?
I built the house with a wonderful small contractor that I had worked with in my prior profession or prior partnership, and Larry was terrific, and so I actually ended up developing 21 properties, mostly single family, some multifamily, and a couple office projects. I developed them and built them, and it was all just developing an aesthetic and an approach to functional, livable environments.
It's interesting because you have a reputation, in Malibu, which is amazing, but not only are you an architect, you're a developer, you're into construction, and then you also have, unlike a lot of architects, actually kept some of the investment for this property we're sitting in. And you've really been a role model for others who are yet struggling architects and artists, and how they can create and also develop and also keep some of that for return on investment and then grow their own life. And so that to me is really unique that you did that in Malibu. So you were a visionary way back when. And I wanted to also talk about some of the issues about living on the beach here in Malibu, because the Cove Colony was a new development as well. After the Malibu Colony, we all know it was the artist village where all the artisans came and they fed off each other, and it was a beautiful community. And I really see that today in the Cove Colony as well. And you lived there too, right?
Yes, when you talk about the Malibu Colony, I remember one of the spec homes was a home I built and sold to Joni Mitchell. And,
wow.
It's very interesting. I'm more of an architect than a smart investor developer. I sold her that property for I think roughly $1.8 million. This was some time ago, the late 80s, maybe early 80s. And I made a whopping $300,000 profit. And about 10 or 12 years later, she sold the property for $28 million. So I don't regret it. I had fun designing it and building it.
Well, you have a lot of value, right? And so maybe that's, I'm curious. So I want to go into one home we're looking at right now today, is the 2694 Malibu Cove Colony. And I have some specific questions because what you created is, in my opinion, and what Joni saw, a work of art that does increase because it is so elegant. And I had some questions. So let's talk about the process, because you lived at the beach, and as you know, we talked earlier, your neighbors are right next door. So what was the process? You used the light and then you had privacy issues. So how did you design to
Well,
consider
when you have conditions that force you into alternative approaches, and living on the beach is one of them. Let's see. Um, the irony that you have rows of houses on narrow lots, one after the other, and yet they open to this incredibly expansive water and sky. So how do you blend the two? How do you create privacy and yet openness? And it's not necessarily easy, but it's a mixture of playing with the geometry of walls. I love that lattice work is introduced on that Cove Colony house. A taste of it is on the street, but as you get into the house, the open quality or the dissolving quality of the wall into an open lattice, into a glass, is just an interesting juxtaposition of those three materials: the solid wall, the lattice, the glass. And you need to create privacy from the street, from the neighbors 5 feet away on either side, but otherwise you're forced into opening the design not only within your limited area, but to that beach and to the sky. And so you really got an ever-changing environment.
That's you know what, when you go into that house, because you did this atrium, to me, I was wondering, like, well, the sunrise, the sunset, the moonrise, the moonset, like, did you plan for that? Like,
yes. What's interesting, I'll even relate it to this office building. In a lot of the houses, I ended up putting in a glass skylit central corridor, spine, backbone to the house. And what it did was to say, for instance, the first house I built for the family on Point Doom, there was the view of the canyon in front and the ocean and the sky. But you saw that at the end of the house. Master bedroom, living room had that view. But as soon as you open up the center of the house with the skylight, all of a sudden that view comes into the house from the time you walk through the front door, or even before you walk through the front door, if the front door is glass or it has windows on both sides. So you get this sense of openness, and you're literally bringing in that environment that's half a mile away into the center of your house.
it's interesting because the lattice, you talked about the lattice and how you had a wall for privacy, and that is the lattice the transition to, because that pattern, when I see those lattices, I see either one square or like a honeycomb, the whole unit. Like, did you think about that?
When you build on the beach and you have these narrow lots that are anywhere from 30, 40, 50 feet wide, you have to use motifs that what's the word I'm looking for, that lead you through. For instance, meandering walkways instead of a straight walkway. All of a sudden the meandering walkway can open up, and you've just left a 5 or 10 foot wide space and come into a 30 or 40 foot wide space, but that space feels even larger because you were squeezed down as you began to enter it. So whether it's the meandering walkway, whether it's a lattice that carries through, there's a touch at the beginning, and as you make your way through, that becomes more relevant.
Yeah, because it's just the shadows too. When you go into these places with these lattices and these glass elements, what I've noticed is it creates a work of art. Every shadow changes by the hour, and you see things you didn't see before, but then it's gone. It's kind of like here today or here this hour and gone in one. You know, it's
Well, for instance, when you have that corridor, that skylit corridor, not only are you playing with light and shade, but the sun comes up in the east, so in the morning you're looking at the sun. Noontime you're looking at the sun. Evening you're still looking at the sun. So even on this kind of narrow, restricted environment, you look at the sun all day long.
yeah, it's just divine when I looked at that. And then I wanted to know about when you lived in it. I don't know how long you lived in this 26940 property, which is on Cove Colony, but there's an emotional feel, a vibe. And when people go into it today, because a lot of people have had the fortune, it's almost like you go into a different time-space dimension. And so I guess my question is, as an architect, like, how did you create that vibe? Like, what
Pure luck. No,
No.
I don't know.
but is there a like, the feelings are hard to get, like, and as an architect, is it intentional? Is it like,
Oh, that's a good question. You know, I work with a lot of very scale models. Is it? I mean, I don't I mean, sometimes I see from day one what I want to do. Sometimes it's literally an exploration. I wouldn't call myself anywhere near a natural artist, so I struggle or work to find a solution. I sketch a lot, I build little scale models, massive models. A lot of wall forms are dissolved.
yes.
And you know, that creates a certain melding of space and other materials. You know, it's interesting, I wanted to mention when I said about the center of the house being the spine, the glass backbone, and so forth. Even this project, I would describe this project as I had two very distinct